The sound I remember most from that October night wasn't the wind, though it howled like a lost thing around the eaves of my little bungalow. It wasn't the relentless drumming of the rain on the porch roof. It was the knock. 3 soft, hesitant taps on the front door, so faint I almost convinced myself I'd imagine them against the storm's noise. I was sitting in my armchair by the low glow of a single lamp, a book unread in my lap, a cup of tea gone cold on the side table. I was 58 years old, and my life had settled into a quiet, predictable rhythm there in my modest apartment in Akron, Ohio. The days were measured in cups of tea, library books, and the gentle, solitary rituals of a woman who had learned, after a divorce that felt more like a relief than a tragedy, to cherish her own company. I rose, my knees protesting as they often did on damp evenings, and shuffled to the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. My friends knew better than to venture out on a night like this. Through the frosted glass of the door's window, I saw a blurred, hunched silhouette. For a wild, irrational moment, my heart leapt. Some foolish part of me thought it might be my daughter, Sarah, though she lived 3 states away and would have called. I opened the door. The wind lashed a sheet of cold rain into the hallway. And there she was, my younger sister, Clara. She was 37 but looked a decade older, her face pale and pinched under the hood of a cheap, sodden coat. Her eyes were huge, hollowed out by a fatigue that went far beyond physical tiredness. And in her arms, swaddled tightly in a blanket that was already dark with moisture at the edges, was a baby. "Maggie," she whispered, and my name sounded broken on her lips. "Clara. Good heavens, getting out of the rain." I stepped back, ushering her inside. She moved like a ghost, leaving a trail of water on the linoleum. She stood in the middle of my living room, dripping, shivering, but she made no move to take off her coat or hand me the baby. She just held the bundle close, rocking slightly on her feet. "I didn't know where else to go," she said, her voice a thin thread of sound. "Of course you came here. Let me get you a towel." "Is this?" I gestured to the baby, my mind scrambling. I knew Clara had been unwell. Our phone calls had grown sparse and strained. She'd mentioned a man, a mistake, a parting of ways. She hadn't mentioned a pregnancy. She hadn't mentioned a child. "This is Lily," Clara said, and a tremor of something, love, despair, flickered in her eyes as she looked down at the tiny face peeking from the blankets. "She's 3 months old." I reached out, instinct taking over. "Here, let me hold her while you get dry. You're soaked through." To my surprise, Clara relinquished the baby easily, almost eagerly. Lily was light as a sparrow, her breath a soft, milky puff against my neck. She smelled of damp wool and baby powder. Clara shrugged off her coat, letting it fall in a wet heap on the floor. She accepted a towel but just held it, not using it. "I'm in trouble, Maggie. Bad trouble. Not with the law," she added quickly, seeing my face. "Just inside. In here." She pressed a fist to her chest. I can't do it. The crying. The never sleeping. The feeling that the walls are closing in. He's gone. There's no money. I look at her, and I feel nothing. Or I feel this crushing, terrifying weight. What kind of mother says that? Her confession came out in a frantic, choked rush. I stood frozen, little Lily a warm weight against my shoulder. I'd seen Clara through breakups, through job losses, through what our mother called her spells. But this was a depth of darkness I'd never witnessed. "Clara, listen to me. What you're feeling, it's more common than you think. It's called postpartum depression. It's treatable. You need help, honey. Real, professional help. You can stay here. We'll figure this out together. You and me and Lily." She looked at me then, and the emptiness in her gaze chilled me to my marrow. "No, Maggie. You don't understand. I need to go. I need to not be here. I need to not be anyone's mother for a little while. Just a few days. A week. I just need to breathe." "Okay," I said, my mind racing. "Okay, a week. You can have the guest room. Lily can sleep in with me. We'll manage. You rest. You sleep for a whole day if you need to." A semblance of calm seemed to settle over her. She even managed a frail, wobbly smile. "You were always the strong one, Maggie." "Thank you. I need to get my bag from the car." "I left it on the passenger seat." "You drove here in this?" "I had to." She moved toward the door, picking up her wet coat. "Give me your keys, I'll get it." "You're exhausted." "No." The word was sharp, a crack in the quiet room. She softened instantly. "No, it's okay. I'm already wet. 2 minutes." And before I could protest further, she was out the door, swallowed by the slashing rain and the dark. I stood there, rocking Lily, waiting. The wind blew the door shut. A minute passed. Then 2. Then 5. A cold, creeping dread began to uncoil in my stomach. I shifted Lily to one arm, went to the door and opened it. The street was a dark river, lit by the occasional sodium glow of a street lamp. My driveway was empty. No car. No Clara. She was gone. The longest night of my life began with a screaming infant. Lily, sensing the absence, the change in smell, the panic in the unfamiliar arms that now held her, awoke with a piercing, frantic cry. I was not unprepared for motherhood. I had raised Sarah, after all, but that was a lifetime ago. My body was not the body of a 30-year-old woman. My patience was not the boundless patience of a young mother. My arms ached, my head throbbed, and my heart was a frantic bird trapped in the cage of my ribs. I tried everything. A bottle. She turned her head away, wailing. A fresh diaper. She screamed through the change. Walking, bouncing, singing old lullabies I hadn't thought of in decades. Nothing worked. In the small hours of the morning, as gray light began to bleed through the rain-streaked windows, I finally sat on the edge of my bed, Lily held against my chest, and I wept. I wept from exhaustion. I wept from fear. And I wept for my sister, out there somewhere in the storm, broken in a way I feared I could not fix. When the clock finally showed a reasonable hour, I called the only people I could think of. Our parents. They lived 2 hours south, in a tidy retirement community. My father answered, his voice still crisp with sleep. "Dad, it's Maggie." Clara's here. Or she was. She left. She left the baby." There was a long silence on the line. I heard him sigh, a weary, heavy sound. "Put your mother on," he said, and there was a muffled exchange. My mother's voice came on, tight and controlled. "Margaret, is the child safe?" "Yes, Mom, Lily's safe. She's right here." But Clara just drove off. "She's not in a good way." She was talking about not feeling anything, about walls closing in. "We have to find her. We have to call someone." Margaret, listen to me. My mother's tone was one I knew well, the voice that brooked no nonsense, the voice that had governed our childhood with quiet, unwavering rules. "Your sister has made her choices. Again, the drama, the chaos, it's who she is. She's been like this since she was a teenager. We cannot keep chasing her, cleaning up her messes. We are in our 80s. Your father has his heart. I have my nerves. We do not have the capacity for this. Mom, this isn't a mess. This is a baby. Her baby. And she's sick. She needs help. She needs to take responsibility," my mother said, her voice cold and final. "She dumped that child on your doorstep because she knows you're soft. She knows you'll take her in. Well, you've made your choice, Margaret. You opened that door. She's your burden now." The word hit me like a physical blow. Burden. It echoed in the silent, babyless quiet that had miraculously descended. Lily had cried herself to sleep against my shoulder. "You can't mean that. She's your granddaughter." "We have one granddaughter. Sarah. We know her. This child is a stranger born from another of Clara's disasters. If you want to involve the authorities, that is your business. But we will not be taking that baby. And we cannot stop Clara from self-destructing. We have tried for 30 years. We are done." The click on the line was soft, definitive. I stood there, the phone humming in my hand, looking down at the sleeping, tear-stained face of my niece. Burden. The word painted everything. The sudden, Total upheaval of my peaceful life. The terrifying unknown of Clara's fate. The sheer, physical toll of caring for a newborn at my age. The judgment in my mother's voice. I felt utterly, devastatingly alone. The next few days were a blur of survival. I bought formula, diapers, a second-hand crib I struggled to assemble. My world shrank to the four walls of my apartment, measured in 3-hour increments between feedings. My friends called, concerned. I gave them a sanitized version. My sister was unwell. I was helping with the baby for a little while. I saw the pity in their eyes, heard the unspoken questions. I stopped answering the door. The silence from my parents was a constant, aching presence. I called Clara's phone over and over. It went straight to voicemail. Then, one day, the number was no longer in service. Lily, in her silent moments, was beautiful. She had Clara's dark hair, and when she stared up at me with her wide, navy blue eyes, it was like looking into my sister's face from decades ago, before the shadows settled in. In the quiet midnight feedings, with just the nightlight glowing, a fierce, unexpected protectiveness would surge in me. This tiny life had been left on my literal doorstep. She was innocent. She was here. And I was all she had. But the resentment was there too, a bitter companion. I resented Clara for her abandonment, for her spectacularly awful timing. I resented my parents for their cold, practical cruelty. I resented my own body for its fatigue, the way my back screamed after hours of rocking. I resented the loss of my book club, my quiet mornings, my freedom. I was a grandmother, for heaven's sake. I was supposed to be visiting Sarah, taking leisurely trips, enjoying the fruits of a life already lived, not starting over. One afternoon, as Lily napped, I sat at my kitchen table with a stack of official-looking paperwork. Applications for temporary guardianship. Information on social services. The path before me forked in two terrifying directions. Become Lily's permanent caretaker, a mother again at nearly 60, or involve the system, with all its uncertainty and potential heartbreak. I put my head in my hands. I was not a mother. I was an aunt, a stand-in, a temporary shelter in a storm. But what happens when the storm doesn't pass? What happens when temporary becomes forever? A week turned into a month. Autumn in Akron deepened, the trees shedding their fiery coats, leaving skeletons against a gunmetal sky. The police filed a missing persons report for Clara, but with no evidence of foul play and a history of what they termed voluntary mobility, there was little they could do. She was an adult. She had left of her own accord. The baby was safe and cared for. It was a domestic issue, not a criminal one. I felt like I was living two lives. In one, I was Maggie, a retired office manager with a fondness for historical novels and a slight arthritic twinge in her right hand. In the other, I was the primary caregiver for an infant, a woman who functioned on fractured sleep, who could prepare a bottle one-handed, who knew the theme song to every gentle children's program on television. The two selves did not reconcile. I felt stretched thin, a ghost haunting my own life. The breaking point came on a Thursday. Lily had been fussy with a cold. I hadn't slept for more than an hour at a stretch for 2 nights. The apartment was a mess. I was still in my bathrobe at 3 in the afternoon when there was a knock at the door. It was Mrs. Henderson from across the hall, holding a small casserole dish. "I thought you could use a hot meal, dear," she said, her kind eyes taking in my disheveled state, the crying baby on my hip. Tears, hot and sudden, filled my eyes. "Thank you," I choked out. "It's just a lot." She patted my arm. "You're a saint, taking this on. That sister of yours, well. But that little one is lucky to have you." After she left, I put the casserole in the fridge and sank onto the sofa, Lily finally sleeping in my arms. A saint. The word felt like a lie. Saints didn't seethe with resentment. Saints didn't lie awake at night fantasizing about a silent, empty apartment. Saints didn't look at a helpless baby and feel, sometimes, a flash of pure, unadulterated anger for the life that had been taken from them. I looked down at Lily's face, peaceful in sleep, and I saw Clara. Not the haunted woman from the rainy night, but my little sister, the gap-toothed girl who'd followed me everywhere, the teenager who'd borrowed my clothes without asking, the young woman whose laughter used to fill a room before it got quieter and then scarce. Where was she? Was she warm? Was she safe? Was she even alive? The fear was a constant, low-grade fever. The next morning, fueled by a desperate need for answers, I did something I hadn't done in years. I packed a diaper bag, bundled Lily into her car seat, and drove to our childhood home. I hadn't spoken to my parents since that awful phone call. The retirement community was manicured and silent. My father answered the door. He looked older, smaller. He didn't smile. Margaret. He stepped back to let us in. The house was oppressively neat, smelling of lemon polish and inactivity. My mother emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. Her eyes went immediately to Lily, who was awake and blinking in the bright light. A complex wave of emotion, pain, regret, stern avoidance, passed over her face. She did not reach for her. "We've made tea," she said, turning back toward the kitchen. We sat at the familiar Formica table. I settled Lily's carrier on the floor beside me. The silence was thick. "I need to know if you've heard from her," I said, cutting to the heart of it. "Any call? A postcard? Anything?" My father shook his head. My mother stared into her teacup. "We have not," she said. "Do you understand what you said to me?" The words tumbled out, fueled by months of sleepless anguish. "You called your granddaughter a burden. You told me she was my problem. Your own flesh and blood." My mother's composure cracked, just for a second. Her chin trembled. "Do you think I don't lay awake thinking about that child? About Clara? But Margaret, you have to understand. We are tired. We raised 2 daughters. We buried a son. We survived recessions, illnesses, disappointments. Clara, she exhausted every bit of spare emotion we had. Every time we lifted her up, she found a new depth to fall to. We cannot fall with her again. We don't have the strength to hit the bottom." It wasn't cruelty, I realized with a jolt. It was surrender. It was the white flag raised after a war that had lasted decades. They had loved Clara fiercely, but her struggles had been a black hole, swallowing their retirement, their peace, their health. Lily represented not a new beginning, but the terrifying possibility of another long, draining battle. "She's not Clara," I whispered, looking down at my niece. "She's Lily." My father reached over, his gnarled hand covering mine for a brief, shocking moment. "We know," he said, his voice gravelly. "And we see what you're doing. We're not proud of how we handled it, but we cannot be what you need us to be, or what she needs." It was the closest I would get to an apology. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was understanding. They were not villains. They were just 2 old, wounded people out of reserves. The visit changed something in me. The either/or choice, raise Lily or give her up, began to dissolve. It wasn't so clear-cut. I wasn't a martyr, and I wasn't a savior. I was just Maggie. And I was here. Lily was here. And for now, here was where we both had to be. Winter arrived, locking Ohio in a deep freeze. My life found a new, fragile rhythm. I joined a grandparents raising grandchildren support group I found online. Sitting in a church basement with a dozen other weary, older faces, I heard stories that mirrored my own. Stories of addiction, abandonment, tragedy. I was not alone. The word burden was never used here. The word was challenge. The word was love. The word was family. I learned to ask for help. Sarah, my daughter, flew in for a long weekend. She was shocked, furious with Clara, worried about me. But the moment she held Lily, her practical, nurse's demeanor softened. "She looks like you, Mom," she said. Around the eyes. That simple observation forged a new link. This was not just my sister's child. This was our family. Sarah's visits became lifelines. I began to take Lily out into the world. To the library for toddler story time, where I was always the oldest caregiver by 2 decades. To the park, bundled like a little red marshmallow, to feel the weak winter sun on our faces. I made friends with other caregivers, not their grandparents, but nannies and young mothers. I was Maggie, Lily's aunt, and that was identity enough for them. The love for Lily, when it fully arrived, did not come as a thunderclap. It was not the all-consuming passion of first-time motherhood I'd felt with Sarah. It was quieter, deeper. It was the love of a river that has carved its own canyon over time. It was in the way her whole face lit up when I walked into her room in the morning. It was in the feel of her small, trusting hand in mine as she took her first wobbling steps across my living room rug in early spring. It was in the way she would pat my cheek with her sticky fingers and say, Mimi, her chosen name for me, a syllable born purely from her own heart. One rainy April afternoon, a year and a half after that fateful night, the phone rang. It was a social worker from a city 400 miles away. Clara had been found. She was in a hospital. She was stable, but she was frail. She had been living in shelters, in a fog of depression and poor health. She had asked for me. My heart hammered against my ribs. The ghost had materialized. I arranged for Sarah to take Lily, and I drove. The journey felt endless. I didn't know what I would find, what I would say. The woman in the hospital bed was a stranger. Bone thin, her hair lank, her eyes still holding that haunting distance. But when she saw me, they focused, and filled with tears. Maggie. I stood by the bed, a canyon of hurt and time between us. Hello, Clara. Lily. The name was a plea. She's safe. She's beautiful. She's talking. She calls me Mimi. A sob racked Clara's thin frame. I'm so sorry. I was so lost. I thought if I disappeared, the darkness would too. But it came with me. I pulled a chair close and took her hand. It was cold. We looked for you. I know. I couldn't come back until I could be better. For her. I'm not better yet, but I want to be. She looked at me, raw and shattered. Do you hate me? I thought of the sleepless nights, the aching back, the profound loneliness, the word, burden, echoing in the dark. I thought of Lily's laugh, her first steps, the way she curled against me when she slept, the unexpected, canyon-deep love. I thought of our parents, sitting in their silent, polished house, too wounded to help. The tapestry of the last 18 months was too complex for a single thread of hate. No, Clara, I said, my own tears falling. I don't hate you. I've been so angry and so scared, but I don't hate you. I've missed my sister. We cried together for all that was broken and all that remained. Clara came back to Akron, but not to my apartment. She entered a long-term residential program for mental health and rehabilitation. It was a 40-minute drive away. Every Sunday, Lily and I would visit. The first visits were agonizing. Lily, now a vibrant toddler with a head of dark curls, was shy, hiding behind my legs. Clara's face would crumple with a pain no medication could touch. But slowly, stitch by fragile stitch, a new pattern began to form. We'd meet in the common room. I'd bring picture books. Clara would read to Lily, her voice growing stronger each week. Then they'd color. Then, one glorious Sunday, Lily climbed onto Clara's lap of her own accord and laid her head on her mother's shoulder. I looked away, granting them that private moment of grace, my own heart full to breaking. My role was changing. I was no longer the sole guardian, the burden bearer. I was the bridge, the safe harbor, the aunt, the Mimi. Clara was doing the hard, painful work of becoming a mother, and I was there to support her, to catch Lily when she stumbled, to catch Clara when she faltered. My parents, cautiously, began to re-enter the picture. A photo of Lily I'd sent them was now in a frame on their mantel. They came for a brief, carefully orchestrated visit at a park. My mother did not hold Lily, but she watched her play on the swings with a look of such naked longing it took my breath away. A thaw had begun, glacial in its slowness, but a thaw nonetheless. It has been 3 years now since the knock in the rain. Lily is a bright, chatty preschooler. She has a room at my apartment and a room at the small, sunny apartment Clara now rents with the help of a support program. We have a complicated, carefully built schedule. Some days with me, some days with her mom. We have dinners together, the three of us. Clara is on medication. She sees a therapist. She has bad days, but she has more good ones. She is a good mother. Tender, attentive, present in a way she never could have been before. My life is not the quiet, solitary one I'd envisioned for my 60s. It is louder, messier, infinitely more complicated. I have less time for books, but I have more drawings of smiling stick figure families taped to my refrigerator. I have less quiet, but I have more laughter. I have less freedom, but I have more purpose. My parents call now, to speak to Lily, to check on Clara. The word burden has never been spoken again. It has been replaced by other words. How is she? Can we help? We love you. I thought that night was an ending. The end of my peace. The end of my sister as I knew her. The end of my family's fragile unity. But I was wrong. It was a brutal, painful beginning. The story of our family was shattered that night, like a piece of fine china dropped on a hard floor. But in the years since, we have been picking up the pieces. Not to glue it back into what it was. That shape is gone forever. But to make something new from the fragments. A mosaic. The pattern is unfamiliar. It has sharp edges and unexpected colors. It tells a story of abandonment, yes, but also of refuge. Of fracture, but also of mending. Of a burden that, in the carrying, transformed into the most unexpected gift. Sometimes, when I'm tucking Lily into bed at my place, she'll wrap her arms around my neck and whisper, "Love you, Mimi." And I'll think of that cold, rainy doorway, of the hollow-eyed woman and the precious bundle in her arms. I'll think of the lonely, terrifying months that followed. And I'll whisper back, my voice thick with an emotion too vast for any single word, "I love you too, my girl. More than you'll ever know." The knock in the rain brought the storm inside. But after the storm, if you're very lucky and very stubborn, and you just keep putting one foot in front of the other, you sometimes find a rainbow you never could have dreamed of, painted in colors you never knew you had inside you. And you realize that the greatest strengths, the most enduring loves, are often forged not in ease, but in the weathering.